Welcome to a new episode of The Blue Sofa. Today, we're going to talk about the difference between growing a business and actually scaling a business because the two things are not the same. Growing a business means that you build something that you sell, the clients' lists are getting longer, you sell more. Also, typically means that the founder is getting a lot busier. The whole thing seems to grow, but as we talked about before here in the Blue Sofa, when we're growing a business, it means that the founder typically is pushing it. So that's how I define growth, which is an amazing thing, especially if you are in a growing phase where you are building your business or where you are building it and designing it for consistent sales. But scaling is something completely different. Scaling is actually happening, or that's how I define it, when the business can carry more clients, more revenue, more demand without requiring larger investment of the founder's time and energy, and of course, personal presence. I think that distinction really matters a lot because a lot of what gets called scaling strategy, as I see it, is actually just a growth strategy wearing different sets of clothes, right? So it means more content, more launching, more visibility, and putting in a lot more effort. Now, what I want to explore in this episode is what it actually takes to build a business that is designed to scale, not just designed to keep on moving while the founder keep on pushing. So here's the question I want to start with. If you looked at your business right now, could you tell me exactly how a new client moves from first discovering your work to becoming paying client? Not roughly, or they kind of find me on social media and then they reach out in DMs, but could you actually map it? Could you draw it on a piece of paper and hand it over to somebody else and have them understand the pathway completely clearly? For most founder, the honest answer is no. And it's not criticism. Simply the most important thing to understand about why businesses scale, or some businesses scale, and why others are not designed to scale. Because scalable businesses have an architecture. They have intentional pathways. They have clear structures. They have a system that work on moving people forward, not because the founder is manually pushing every conversation or is posting more or turns every sale into an experience and push every sales into existence. But the architecture is actually quite often invisible from the outside, but it's the one thing that really, really makes a difference. And building that architecture is not about marketing, and it's not about another growth strategy, and it's not often a very visible task because it takes a certain mindset and leadership to get into that mindset of designing to scale. So there is a version of running a business that is essentially sustained by personal effort. And as I said before, when you're building a business, you post, you launch, you reach out, you follow up, you show up, and clients come in because you kept showing up, because your energy carried the whole thing forward. And that model really works. And as I also explained many times before here on the podcast, it is often how most businesses start out, and that's absolutely normal and perfect. But at some point, it also becomes a ceiling because the ceiling of that model is the ceiling of the founder. You can only do so much. You can only post so many times. You can only launch so many times. You can only carry so much weight. And at some point, the question is not longer how much are you willing to work. It's actually whether the business is designed to carry what you are building. So this is the distinction I want to stay with for this episode. Because most scaling problems are not effort problems, they are architecture problems. And the founder is working hard enough and sometimes harder than they actually should have to do. But the structure underneath the business was designed for a different stage. It was designed for validation. It was designed for proving that the offer actually worked and for getting the first clients and for building that early momentum, not necessarily designed for scaling. And those are two very different designs. So before I talk about what scalable architecture actually looks like, I want to name something that is fundamental to understanding why the front end of most businesses is not designed to scale. And that is the difference between a cold audience and a warm audience. And this distinction is very important to understand if you want to build a scalable structure in your business. Because a warm audience, that's people who already knows you. They have been reading your content and listening to your podcast and engaging with your ways of thinking and communicating over time. So they trust you. They understand what you do. And when you make an offer, it's very likely that they understand it because they understand your thinking. A cold audience, on the other hand, is starting from zero. They may have been exactly the right person for what you offer, but they don't know you yet. And a cold audience doesn't buy the way a warm audience buys. There is a difference in their behavior. And here is where the scaling problem becomes very, very clear, because most front-end systems, the way you bring in clients, are actually built for warm audiences. So the offer, the sales conversation, and the content, that is all calibrated for people who already have context, who already have trust, and who already understand what the founder stands for. And when the business then tries to grow, when it starts reaching new people, attracting a colder audience, the conversion rate drops. So that means the sales become inconsistent, and the founder have to work harder to compensate. So post more content, be more visible, do more launching, more campaigns, be more present. And the real problem here is actually not that they have to do that, even though over time that can become a problem, right? Because this is actually what often leads to founder burnout. But the real issue within the frame of this podcast, the real issue is that the business is asking a cold audience to make a warm audience decision. And no amount of additional content will ever fix that problem. What fixes it is architecture. What fixes it is a deliberate pathway that takes someone from being cold to being warm systematically without the founder having to carry that manually. And that is exactly what a scalable front-end client system actually does. So a front-end client system is the first mechanism that we need to have in place when we want to scale our business, because it's the mechanism that moves someone from first discovering your business to being actually ready to buy your offers. And I want to be really specific about this, because this is a scaling asset, not just a marketing tactic. When this system is in place, a few things will happen that fundamentally change the architecture of the business. First of all, the business becomes less dependent on the founder's constant presence. So it doesn't require you to post more on social media, for example, or show up more in your visibility. The system actually does the relationship building, the trust building, the value demonstration, not through manipulation or less intimacy, but through a real structured contact with the founder's thinking, right? And it does this whether or not the founder is actively pushing it forward that week. The second thing that happens is that conversions change. So when someone arrives at the main offer, having already moved through a well-designed front end, the conversation is different, right? Because there is less explaining to do, less convincing, and the trust is actually already built because you build it into your front-end system. That means that the sales becomes a confirmation of something the client has already been deciding internally, and not cold pitching that I know a lot of people really, really don't like. Third thing is, and this is actually the part that matters the most for scale, the system compounds. A well-designed front end does not just serve the clients in the front of you right now. It keeps on working independently of you. It keeps moving people through that design pathway. And over time, it builds a pool of warm, trustworthy potential clients that the business can draw from, rather than constantly having to create that trust from scratch, right? And that is the structural shift that actually makes scaling possible. Not more visibility, not more posting, not more campaigns, but architecture, creating that pathway of the front-end system. Now, a front-end system is not one specific thing. There's not one single format that works for every business model, and every founder. And I know, well, I hope you know, because that's part of my whole reason for creating the Blue Sofa, is to talk about business without the hype, without the trends, without like the shiny object syndrome of wanting to shift and buy something new just because some guru says that this is the new strategy, it's going to work for everybody. So there are 3 primary forms that this front-end system can take, and understanding which one actually fits your business is part of what makes the difference between a system that actually scales and a system that creates more work, or a system that you want to change because it actually doesn't really fit your business model. And the first one is a classic lead magnet. We all know lead magnets. They are amazing. I know some people say that lead magnets are dead. In my opinion and experience, they are far from dead. A lead magnet is a free resource, a guide, a framework, a diagnostic that someone can access just in exchange for joining your email list. It have to deliver real value immediately. What it does is that it demonstrates your thinking, and it opens the door to an ongoing relationship building through emails over time. And it works particularly well for founders who communicate primarily through writing. So whose audience processes information at their own pace, where the depth of thinking it in itself is the proof of value. And I know you will find a lot of marketing, it's what I call hype marketing, that's going to tell you that there is a thing called a freebie seeker, somebody who just wants free information. I want to shift that a little bit and offer you a reframe, because what that means in my experience is that person is actually looking for a solution for a problem. They just don't know if they can trust you yet. They just don't know if your brand actually offers the solution they're looking for. So instead of thinking of this like somebody is a freebie seeker, then think of it like, what can a freebie do for my business? What can a lead magnet do for my business? What it can do is it can draw in these people who have an interest in what you're offering, and then over time build a relationship. So you take somebody from a cold audience to a warm audience. And I think that distinction is really important to understand, so you don't dismiss something that could be a great value for your system, for your scaling system, if you're looking to scale your business. The second front-end system is kind of structured experience that brings people into direct contact with you and your methodology in real time. It could also be a challenge, for example. What this does is that it compresses trust building significantly. So someone can move from cold to actually being warm in a matter of hours, because they experience your thinking directly, not just through a piece of content. This works well for founders who are naturally strong live, who read a room well, who can present well, and who creates connection through this direct teaching rather than written or recorded content. Now, you can also use this in the end of your lead magnet, your free lead magnet, because what it's going to do is going to help you actually get a lot of cheap leads from your lead magnet. That's often very, very much cheaper than, for example, advertising a conversion event. And then bring in even warmer people to your conversion event. So many ways of designing this, and it's all going to depend on who you are and how you want to grow your business and scale your business. This is a completely sidetrack. So let's dive into the third version. The third is a mini product. Now, this is a low investment paid offer. Could be a short course, could be a paid workshop, or a focused intensive that gives someone a real taste of working with your mythology. Only ask for a small financial investment and a small time commitment, but it delivers a lot of value and begins the buyer relationship. And this works particularly well when the mythology itself is the clearest demonstration of value. So when the best proof of what you do is to directly experience it. So each of these serves the same structural process. What they are doing for your business is they're moving someone from being cold to warm, building trust before the main offer is introduced, and reducing the founder dependency in the sales process. But they are not interchangeable. A conversion event delivered by someone who is not naturally strong live will for sure underperform, right? And a lead magnet that doesn't connect to an ongoing communication system creates a list of people, but not a relationship. And a mini product that doesn't reflect the real mythology will not warm the client toward the next step. So the question is not so much which of these is working for your business. So the real question here is which of these fits the way you naturally works and how your audience behavior is. And it will depend very much on your niche and your client type, which one is going to work. Some businesses, especially expert businesses, they need a lot more warming up before they can actually sell the higher priced products and get better clients. So that means that a lead magnet could be a great way to start because you have to introduce a cold audience to a lot of relationship building before they have enough trust to actually buy from you. What happens often is that when you want to scale a business, you create some kind of front-end system that serves not a cold audience, but a warm audience. And then you're not getting any scale. So I also want to say what is really important when you choose your front-end system is to analyze your client journey. So understand exactly what is the main problem your client experience when they are in the segment of the cold audience. Otherwise, you're just going to keep on serving a warm audience. And then it's actually better for you to sell your products to a warm audience. So I hope that makes sense. So when a front-end system is embedded in your business, not just built, but actually running, something shifts in the whole thing. Something shifts in how your business operates. Because marketing becomes way simpler and more directed. Your marketing and your visibility actually has a purpose now. And that is to get cold people into your front-end client system, right? So every piece of content has a job. It's not just visibility or engagement. It is actually pointing directly to your front-end system and inviting the right people into the journey. And that clarity really changes how founders work with content, because the question is no longer what should I post today? How many times should I post? But actually, how does this serve the architecture? And sales also become less pressured because the founder is no longer carrying every sale manually. The system has already done the work early on. So by the time someone actually arrives at the offer, they are way more warm, right? And the conversation confirms that they already decided even before you showed them the offer, rather than you have to persuade them into something when they just met you. And the founder relationship with the business also changes. The constant background anxiety if I stop pushing, will things then dry up? That starts to ease up a lot. Not because the work disappears, of course, there will still be work, but the nature of the work changes. So it becomes, so the work is supported by this structure, and the founder is no longer the only moving part of the business. So the businesses that scale sustainably are not the ones with more content. They're not the one with more visibility or the biggest launches, actually. They are the one with the strongest architecture underneath all the activities. And the most important architectural question for any founder at a scaling stage is this: how does my business move someone from cold to warm without me having to carry that manually every single time? And if you can answer that quickly and you can build a system that does that consistently, then you have a front end of a scalable business. And again, if you can't answer that clearly, don't worry, you can learn that. But just know that this is not a content problem. It's not a visibility problem. It's not a launch problem. It's an architecture problem. And that is solvable. And that's the good news here. So that is the shift I want you to sit with. Not thinking about how can I do more? How can I push more? But how is my business actually designed? And what needs to change in this design so the business can carry what I am actually building. So if you're sitting with this and thinking, I kind of feel that my structure is off, or I'm not sure if I even have a structure and I'm not sure what to do, I want to tell you something really useful. Most founders are amazing at seeing symptoms, inconsistent sales, or you're not growing the way you want to, or maybe you're stagnant. The business is too dependent on me. I'm a bottleneck. But the root cause can be really harder to see clearly from the inside of a business. And it's almost always in one of these three places: the foundation, the sales system, or the leadership layer. That's almost always the root causes of the symptoms. And if you wanted to know where your ceiling is, I created the Founder Growth Ceiling Guide to help you identify which one is actually holding your business back right now. It's completely free. Talking about front-end systems, it's completely free. It's a lead magnet, and it gives you a clear and honest lens for diagnosing your specific ceiling. Not in generic terms, but for where your business actually are right now. Where does it sit, and what will be your next step on your journey? And the link is just below this in the show notes. Next episode, we're going to look at something I see a lot when a founder come to me and they want to scale their business. And that is this constant rebuilding. So they think they need new offers, new positioning, new strategies, and a complete restart every few months if they want to scale. And the problem here is that what I find is that the problem is actually never this. It's never that their idea of what they want to scale is not good enough, but it's, like we talked about today, the structure underneath it. So if this episode gave you a language for something you might have been sensing in your business, I would, of course, love for you to share it with another founder, another expert, or business owner who would benefit from this perspective. And if you enjoy the Blue Sofa, it would mean a lot for me if you left a review. It really helps the podcast reach more people who want to build more sustainable and with more clarity and intention. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.